There's a moment in trading that almost everyone recognizes instantly. The trade is on. Price moves in your direction. You're green. Not wildly green, just enough. Enough that you notice your breathing change. Enough that your attention drifts from the chart to the P&L. Enough that your hand hovers over the mouse a little longer than it should. Nothing has technically changed. Your thesis is still valid. Your target hasn't been hit. Structure hasn't broken. But something inside you shifts. The urge appears. Subtle at first, almost reasonable. To do something. To protect. To lock it in. To make the feeling permanent. And before you even realize you're negotiating with yourself, you're out. Flat. Relieved. Safe. And then, often just minutes later, price continues exactly where you thought it would. This video is about that moment. Not the charts, not the strategy, that moment. Most people think fear shows up when they're losing, when a trade is red, when price moves against them, when the loss is visible. But that's rarely where discipline breaks. Discipline usually breaks when you're right, when you're green, because when you're red, the situation feels defined. The risk is already on the table. The outcome feels contained. You've accepted something. But when you're green, the rules change. Now there's something to protect. Now there's something to lose again. And the nervous system doesn't like that. Open profit feels unstable to the body. Not because it's bad, but because it isn't finished. It's unresolved. Green feels temporary. Red feels final. So the body looks for closure. It looks for certainty, for relief, for something it can lock in. That's why the urge to exit doesn't feel panicked. It feels reasonable. It feels responsible. It even feels disciplined. But it isn't. It's just your system trying to return to safety. What usually happens next is almost automatic. The moment you exit, a story appears. Not a loud one, not defensive, just reasonable. I'll re-enter. I took what the market gave me. No one ever went broke taking profits. And for a moment, that story works. It settles the nervous system. It justifies the decision. It makes the exit feel intentional. But here's the thing most people miss. Those explanations don't come before the exit. They come after. They're not decisions. They're rationalizations. They exist to protect the feeling of relief. Because once you're flat, the tension disappears. The uncertainty is gone. The body relaxes. And the mind steps in to explain why that relief was the correct choice. Not because it was aligned with your plan, but because it ended the discomfort. This is where most traders confuse emotional resolution with good execution. They mistake feeling better for having acted well. And the market doesn't punish that immediately. Often, it rewards it just enough to reinforce the pattern. Until one day, you realize you've been right far more often than you've been paid. There's an important distinction that changes everything once you see it. Relief is not discipline. They feel similar on the surface, but they come from very different places. Relief is emotional. It's the body standing down, the nervous system returning to baseline. Discipline is structural. It's a decision that holds even when nothing feels good. Relief happens after discomfort. Discipline exists before it. When you exit a trade early, what you usually feel isn't confidence. It's relief. The tension drops. The pressure lifts. The uncertainty ends. And because that feeling is immediate, the mind labels it as good, responsible, smart, controlled. But discipline doesn't announce itself with comfort. Discipline is often quiet, unremarkable, sometimes uncomfortable. It doesn't rush to end a feeling. It allows the feeling to exist without needing to fix it. This is why willpower doesn't work here, because the moment you rely on willpower, you've already placed yourself inside the emotional loop. Discipline lives outside that loop. It's not something you summon in the moment, it's something you've already built. And if it isn't built yet, relief will always win.
There's a reason holding a winning trade feels harder than entering one.
Holding feels like giving something up. Control. When you enter a trade, you're active, you're deciding, you're asserting a position. That feels familiar. It feels contained. But once you're in profit, the role changes. Now your job isn't to act, it's to allow. And allowance feels dangerous to a mind that equates control with safety. When you're green, every tick feels personal. Every fluctuation feels like information. Every pause feels like a warning. So the urge to intervene grows. Not because the trade is failing, but because you feel exposed. Holding asks you to sit inside uncertainty without trying to manage it. And that's not a technical skill. That's a self-trust skill. Most traders don't exit early because they distrust the market. They exit early because they don't trust themselves to stay calm when nothing is happening. They don't trust themselves to watch profit fluctuate without interfering. So they take control back. They flatten the position. They end the exposure. And in doing so, they mistake control for correctness. But control is not the same thing as alignment. Sometimes the most disciplined thing you can do is nothing.
At this point, most traders try to solve this problem the wrong way. They try to hold by hoping. Hoping the trade keeps going. Hoping the move extends. Hoping they won't get shaken out. Hope feels patient, but it isn't stable. Hope keeps you emotionally invested. It requires constant checking, constant monitoring, constant reassurance. Structure is different. Structure doesn't ask you how you feel. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't need encouragement. Structure already knows why you're in the trade. It knows what invalidation looks like. It knows what continuation looks like. And it knows what doesn't matter. When structure is in place, holding doesn't require confidence. It requires compliance. This is why traders who rely on hope feel exhausted inside winning trades. They're managing emotion instead of observing information. And exhaustion creates interference. Structure removes the need to manage yourself in real time. It moves the hard decisions to a moment when nothing is at risk. That's not about being rigid. It's about being free from your own emotional commentary while the trade is working. Hope asks, will this keep going? Structure says, I already know what I'm waiting for. And that difference changes everything. There's something important that needs to be said here. Holding a trade does not feel calm. It doesn't feel confident. It doesn't feel rewarding.
and it doesn't feel like certainty. If you're waiting for holding to feel comfortable before you do it, you'll keep exiting early. Because comfort is not the signal. Discomfort is. Holding often feels like sitting with unfinished business. It feels tense. It feels boring. It feels like watching something without being able to touch it. The mind looks for something to fix, something to improve, something to optimize. And when it can't find anything meaningful to do, it creates an action. This is why many traders mistake anxiety for intuition. They think the discomfort means something is wrong, but most of the time, the discomfort is simply the absence of control. Nothing is broken, nothing needs correcting. The trade is just doing what trades do. If you can recognize that feeling for what it is, not a warning, not a signal, not a mistake, but a normal part of holding risk, you stop needing to escape it. And that's where staying becomes possible. At some point, this stops being a technical problem. It stops being about entries, stops being about targets, stops being about holding techniques, and it becomes an identity question. Who are you when nothing needs to be done? The trader who can hold isn't someone with stronger emotions. They're not calmer by nature. They're not immune to pressure. They've just stopped trying to resolve uncertainty in the middle of it. They don't ask the trade to make them feel better. They don't demand reassurance from price. They don't confuse movement with meaning. They understand something simple, that holding is not an action. It's a position you've already accepted before the trade, before the profit, before the discomfort shows up. When you exit early, it's not because you failed. It's because a part of you still believes that feeling better is the same thing as trading well. That belief doesn't change in a moment. It changes through repetition, through observation, through staying present when the urge to escape appears. Each time you notice the discomfort without immediately fixing it, you build trust. Not trust in the market, trust in yourself inside uncertainty. And that's what holding really is. Not confidence, not bravery, not control. Just the ability to stay.